Welcome to Movies That Matter, the podcast about recent films going beyond basic film criticism to boldly explore a social issue affecting people's lives. With me today is...
Justin.
And...
Adam.
All right, all three of us are taking on...
Renfield.
In this modern monster tale of Dracula's servant, Nicholas Hoult stars as Renfield, the tortured aide to history's most narcissistic boss, Dracula, played by Nicolas Cage. Renfield is forced to procure his master's prey and do his every bidding, no matter how debased. But now, after centuries of servitude, Renfield is ready to see if there's a life outside the shadow of the Prince of Darkness. Only he can figure out how to end his codependency. Alrighty. Someone jump in. What did you think?
All right, I'll go first. I loved it. Thought it was highly entertaining movie. The fact that they emphasized the codependency or just the awful boss employee relationship, as well as other just bad relationships that people have. But they did also highlight what makes a good relationship. So, and then Nicolas Cage was Nicolas Cage playing Dracula as Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to agree. I liked it a lot too. I thought it was very kinetic, and it did a good job of kind of foregrounding the one story and not having any additional meat on its bones. Sometimes that was a little annoying, which I'm sure we'll get into, but for the most part, it was just a ton of fun, and obviously, I'm going to say that Nicolas Cage was great, proving that he can be in on a joke. He's one of those people who does that in a movie where... You know, I could talk for days about this, but I think that the main thing is that he takes what he's doing seriously, even when it's a joke, and that shows. I liked it a lot. I thought it was very entertaining.
Yeah, I thought it was entertaining. There were some hit or miss parts for me, for sure, in the performances. I thought Nicholas Hoult was great. Nick Cage was doing Nick Cage. Like, I actually don't have like a huge opinion one way or another on that one. It was fine for what it was. I honestly thought though, I was like thinking back on like that type of character and like
the Dracula character.
Yeah, and I was like, you know what though, like Rutger Hauer really nailed that one in the original Buffy.
Oh yeah.
Where it was like the comedy horror and being creepy in Dracula. I was like, you know, he did a really good job with that. I think I was like, well, what even reference do I have for this performance? That would be it. I didn't love Awkwafina.
What was up with, I guess we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but like, why was that, like, it felt like such a stapled on story to the point where like, she has a sister that you hardly see.
Yeah.
And their like, dad died somehow. And that was like, normally I'm not big on like, well, they didn't explore this, but, like, what was going on with that?
The Lobos, the drug gang, killed the dad?
Yeah.
I guess?
Yeah, he was killed, at least what I got from him was that the father was killed by the drug gang, but it did seem as...
What was he? Was he, like, an innocent victim,
too.
a police officer?
He was a cop.
Yeah. Pretty sure he was a New Orleans police officer, but it seemed... It's one of those examples where there appeared to be a couple of just, like, scenes that didn't make it off the cutting room floor that would have like fleshed that out,
which I'm fine with. I really enjoyed the running time of this movie. I thought that was one of its major strengths, was that it just kept moving.
Yeah, I mean, I did have to think also like there were a lot of close-up shots. I honestly thought that was a little bit too much. I was like, you need to pull back a little, but then I was like, whenever you saw Nicholas Hoult and Awkwafina standing next to each other, I was like, you need to put her on a box and shoot.
Because
like,
the height difference.
So tall.
I was like, I was like, she doesn't even come up to his shoulder. They were so like awkwardly mismatched height-wise.
That whole romance part, I guess it's even not even, the movie seems to not think it's even a romance except for like maybe 3 times.
Yeah.
That I thought I could have used more from. And it's such an easy
or just
fix,
have it be a platonic thing,
yeah.
Just have it be like, we're in this together and we're just friends.
Which would have been the best, but committing either way, I think, would have really improved that storyline with minimal effort. But so on the I'm gonna keep going good bad, right? So on the good side, Brandon Scott Jones,
He plays one of the ghosts in the CBS series Ghost, and he's hilarious. He played the leader of their support group.
Oh, yeah.
That dude is so funny.
He was great.
Yeah. His line deliveries were...
that support
He probably got the support group to me probably got the most laughs.
There was a little Nick Cage Easter egg in there where the guy with the beard, the big guy, is from Dog Eat Dog, his movie with Paul Schrader.
Okay.
Oh, I missed that one.
He's a leading actor in that movie and has a really odd conversation at one point in the movie about Elliott Smith with somebody like picking up at the bar. It's really strange. And I like that he was just like randomly in there.
Okay.
And clearly Nick Cage was like, hey, I want my guy, Christopher Matthew Cook, to be in one of these, have a part in the group scene.
Yeah. No.
Like that.
Yeah, the support group was great. So like I really liked him, and Iranian actress who played the mom.
She's the best. I love her in everything.
Everything.
The mom running the gang?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Wonderful. Shohreh Adajlu.
Is that, yeah, I'm like, I wasn't going to go for it. Good for you.
I feel free to pick apart my pronunciation. I think that's how you say it.
I'll say, too, that I noticed while watching the movie that she seemed sort of like a parallel to Dracula, like the dynamic she had with her son.
Right.
And Renfield having with Dracula, they were definitely parallels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's another cool thing about the movie is it did not, it wasn't ever, see what we're doing here? It just kind of, these are the people that are in the movie, and you can kind of draw your own conclusions about that.
Yeah.
From there on out.
Yeah. Didn't love Ben Schwartz, though.
I love him in Parks and Rec. I think he's great as that character, but he is definitely somebody where it's like any other time I'm kind of like, dude, you're kind of annoying.
Yeah, I just saw him
It's
in
a little annoying.
The After Party on Apple, and he was good. He was fine in that, but it was sort of the same character.
Yeah. So you could do one thing, or be Sonic, I guess. That's his other thing. But
was he Sonic?
Wait, you played Sonic?
He's the voice of Sonic.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Didn't know that, but I thought his character was annoying as hell, but that was, I think, how it was supposed to be.
Yeah. You're not, you don't want to, I don't need a complex villain that I like. There already is one.
Yeah, no.
In this movie, the side characters were exactly as sidey as they should have been.
Yeah.
Or peripheral.
But he again, in Parks and Rec, he does, side character that's annoying and funny, and this one, it was just, he was just funny. Or he was just annoying. He wasn't funny. And it's I don't know.
Well, and speaking of side characters that I did enjoy were the problematic boyfriends of the women in the support group that Renfield and how that tied into the gang. It was the flow was very natural, at least to me. I'm like, oh, okay, we're connecting these pieces together so they're not just standalones.
Yeah.
Yeah. I honestly think we were sort of dissecting the joke after the movie, but I really think the funniest line is when she compliments his sweatshirt and he's like, I got it at Macy's.
Yeah, Macy's.
And I was like, that was the perfect store to pick in that scenario. And I'm not quite sure why Macy's is so funny, but it was very funny.
It still exists, but who goes there?
Yeah.
It's still very much a thing. I've shopped there recently.
So you go there.
Yeah, but I went there because it was what was there, believe it or not.
Yeah, I know, and they were like, oh, it could have been any store. I was like, no, if he had said Target, it wouldn't have been as funny.
No, it wouldn't be funny at all. Yeah. So I would have how much did Target pay you to say that would have been my thought.
Yeah,
whereas
exactly.
This is seemed like a normal, what somebody alive would say.
Yeah, that's a good point, too. So, I did think there were, I did laugh, I did think there were funny bits, which...
Yeah.
The extreme violence displeased one of my... We're now calling them MTM accomplices.
Affiliates?
Affiliates sounds corporate.
Oh. Accomplices sounds like we're committing a crime.
I know, that's what makes it fun.
Mm-hmm. We'll leave it
So, what did you think of the action sequences, etc.?
They were very over the top with the violence, but it made sense to me when I realized that Robert Kirkman, I don't know if he wrote the screenplay, but I'm pretty sure he was involved with the story.
The story idea.
And it tracks with some of his work that I've read, the comic books he's worked on. And I'm like, oh, this matches up perfectly. So I wasn't surprised, but it was kind of over the top. But it didn't bother me or diminish the experience. I mean, you're dealing with a vampire, so there's going to be some violence you expect.
It didn't seem super gratuitous to me. I think they paced it well.
Mm-hmm.
The fight scenes I thought were quite good.
Yeah.
In a world where you kind of have to see like John Wick to see good fights, this seemed like a lot of fun, and I'm not sure how insane the choreography was, but it looked like their attention was put into kind of like plotting where people were and what was happening. And so I thought it was fine. It worked with the kind of movie we were watching, for sure.
Yeah, no, I guess I'm more positive. Like, I thought they were great. Like, you know me, like, I tend to gravitate towards the Russo brothers. I always think they have some of the best, like, choreographed fight scenes. I haven't seen the John Wick ones.
I think that their Marvel stuff is, like, actually some of the worst fighting that you can possibly watch. Those are always the worst parts of those movies.
For me, I like, that's why I've only seen, like, the Captain America ones. I think they do a good fight scene, but reasonable people can disagree. So this one I enjoyed. Again, I thought it was well choreographed, and you want a fight scene to be like a dance scene, you know? And the extra gore, I was like, definitely cringed in places. Like, there was a lot of blood, but I'm like, I don't know.
It was cartoony enough that I think it wasn't like trying to be like realistic at all, which I think like also can not work sometimes, and they found, I think, the best balance.
Agreed.
With something that, like, I think is just kind of lame, like, funny violence usually doesn't work for me, and this was, like, if I do see it, it's, like, I kind of want it to be like this, where it's, like, not, like, you don't really feel like people are dying in a movie like this.
No, it's fair. The stylistic, I think you hit the right point, Adam, was cartoony, almost, which ties in what I was thinking about, like, Robert Kirkman, and, like, having worked on this.
It did play like a comic book, like with the opening, which I thought was one of the strongest parts, was where like Nick Cage gets to indulge in his like, well, I'm a student of all cinema, and he's playing Dracula as like the 30s Nosferatu opening, and he was like just so funny and so good. It was like winking and serious at the same time in a way. Like, again, I think he's one of the few people that can do that, and it was so great.
I loved when they did that in the movie, and so my headcanon is this is a direct sequel of like that like 1930 Dracula, because you've got Nick Cage, like with his face like on Bela Lugosi, and then I can't remember who the actor that played Renfield was back then, but they had Nicholas Hoult like face over that. I'm like, oh, this is perfect. And then Universal's releasing, so they can easily get away with that.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I mean, when we think of what Dracula looks like, we just think of Bela Lugosi, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, none of that is in the book. Like, that's not Bram Stoker. That's just what Bela Lugosi looks like.
Or the Nosferatu, like...
But he looks really different.
Very early, like, case of rights avoidance, where it's like that, or, like, the stereotypical Universal Dracula. Say, like, a bald monster, or...
Yeah, I mean, it's like the widow's peak, like, the way he dresses, like, all of that comes from the Bela Lugosi.
So canonical.
Speaking of the dress, I thought Dracula's outfits, he just stayed stylish the whole movie. Like, his drip was incredible. Like, I just loved that part.
It was, like, seemed very New Orleans, too. Like, in a way that, like, the setting kind of infiltrated the movie in a very fun way as well. I like that. Too.
I didn't look this up. I don't know if anybody else did. Like, in the station house, they have like a slogan at the top painted on the wall: "No crime till overtime."
I missed that.
Yeah, and I was like, I would almost wager that was like taken from a real news story about corrupt New Orleans cops.
Speaking of which, all the cops in this movie are bad, which I thought was funny, except for Awkwafina and her sister. Yeah. To the point where, like, it just, like, it was so absurd. Like, it was, again, very comic booky, where they're, like, it's not like Serpico, where he's, like, putting his life on the line. She's in, like, the station house being like, you're corrupt, you're corrupt, you're corrupt, and they're, like, just kind of sitting there eating donuts, being like, and, like...
Pays the bills.
It's, like, it's just, like...
Shut that up, Kyle.
Yeah, it's, like, such a, like, it's almost, like, makes it more like a bureaucratical rot, rather than, like, making some statement.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess I'm not an expert on New Orleans cops, but I do remember the headlines of, like, the cop who, like, was at a McDonald's, and they called the police, and she, like, drove around, and she was the cop.
Yeah,
like,
hold on, let me change hats real quick.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's, like, I mean, it's pretty well known how corrupt, so I thought that was to set it, if you're going to set it in New Orleans, like, that was a good place to, like, make those jokes.
Yeah. And again, it just, to me, it proves how fleet the movie is on its feet, that none of this is, like, weighing down the story we care about, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's no... The complaints that I had earlier about lack of backstory and stuff is, like, not things I would have wanted in the movie. It's more, like, just kind of funny.
Yeah, yeah. I think the other thing that, like, really stuck out when we saw it was the speech that... the gaslighting speech that Dracula gives him when the first time Renfield stands up for him, and he's like, let me explain how I'm the real victim here.
It's like, that was...
Classic.
That was so good.
And, like, we laugh...
It's like, guy's, like, face is, like, falling off.
Yeah.
So good.
It's like, I told you the victims I need, and you keep bringing me this.
And, like, so, like, you know, when we were talking about the movie afterwards, my neighbor was like, every single one of us has heard that speech from somebody at some point in our lives.
Yes.
And I was like, I'm thinking of who my person is. Like, yeah.
Again, like, for such a movie that was advertised as being about that, right? Mm-hmm. And, like, the first trailers being basically, like, the group scene is, like, the first trailer. They really don't beat you over the head with that message. It's kind of all on the screen. You know, never does it seem, like, really heavy-handed, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it was a lot more showing and not telling.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is how I like it.
Yeah, it is a movie. Let's keep it moving.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly what I was going to say. I was like, they just show it to you. Like, they have him give that great speech, and you're like, oh, God, I've been there. Like... I've been there when you, like, have a legitimate complaint and they're like, here's why your complaint is BS and my complaints are the real, like, why my life is the hard one. And I'm like,
it was one of my friends that was watching it with me. His analogy was that Dracula just sounded like he was giving a speech you'd expect a pimp to give a prostitute. Like, this is why I need you to go out and work. And you just see it's like, oh, this is going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was, like, one of my favorite parts, like, because I think that was, like, a novel take on it.
It was one of the 3 points of the movie I saw with my father, and that was one of, when he says, I'm the victim here, that was one of the 3 times he laughed. I thought it was really funny.
What were the other 2?
The F you, Kyle, which is funny, because my dad's not, like, a big profanity guy, and the third was when it zooms in, he's like, Dracula's plan to take over the world, and then just the post-it that says "End Renfield," like it's stuck up there, it's like an afterthought, which are 3 of the funniest parts of the movie.
Yeah,
if you're gonna laugh at 3 parts, so, you know.
Again, mine was like that Macy's line. Anything that came out of what did I say his name was, the leader's line, the gay ghost. Like, he just is so funny. I did like that they brought them all back at the end, too. Mm-hmm. I was like, yay, happy ending.
It did seem like a little, like, it was like a turn that I kind of didn't want the movie to make when they all died. But at the same time, I didn't want it to be like the movie ends and, like, they're friends with Dracula. Like, that would have been really annoying. If they, like, solved their problems and stuck together. I think, like, turning them into meat cubes was a lot funnier.
Yeah.
And seemed real.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree.
Him and Renfield to be buddies at the end of the movie would have made this movie, like, if it were literally the same except for that, I would think it was way worse.
That'd have been the worst ending.
Yeah, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
Like, one thing can ruin a whole movie.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, I did, like, so then there's, like... So there's the canon of Dracula that got started with the book, and then there's the ways, like, it's been added onto over the years. And I'm always curious to see, like, which things the movie takes and which things it didn't. And I really liked the, like, welcome mat.
That was so good.
Yes.
And
that, like, they can't come in unless they're invited thing they kept, which I'm always a fan of that when I see it.
Like,
the group scene
too was good, or it's just like, that's just, like, it's creepy but kind of just weird. Like, why are you offering like that?
And the group scene when he's like, don't invite him in, he comes in and like, oh, this is not what we were expecting.
And that was one of, like, the scary, like, I like that the movie kind of wasn't They did not, to me, seem scary at all. But one of the parts, I don't think it was, like, supposed to be.
Right.
But the moment where, like, the guy's like, won't you come in? He's like, no, is, like, kind of a good hair-raising moment in and of itself. And I was like, just having that one shot of sort of, like, not fear, but, like, horror added a lot, I thought, in a movie that didn't really need it. Throughout, right? Like,
no, I like that you had to go through the emotional roller coaster of them dying, which you really cared about them and didn't want them to die, and then you still get the happy ending. I thought that worked really well.
For sure.
And I guess, like, crosses and holy water. I mean, so everybody knows, like, my chief complaint about Twilight was, like, if you're not going to make them vampires, then just don't call them vampires. Like, make up your own magical creature. Like, don't pick vampires and then, like, not embrace any of the canon about vampires. Like, that was annoying to me. It doesn't bother other people, but it bothered me.
That's annoying, though, too, because it's like, first of all, that author has never seen an R-rated film, which I just want to use my soapbox right now to insult her for. And second of all, like, it's like you know better. Right, that's kind of how that comes off to me. Like, I know the best way to present vampires, and it's by abandoning a lot of this other stuff, and, like, there's still vampires.
And they can go out in the sunlight, and you're like, that is such a critical part of the thing. Like,
and then it's like, they sparkle, so they're, like, exposed. And I'm like, for what? For being able to live forever? Like, that's it? Like, it's so dumb. I guess they eat people, too, but, like, that's very toned down.
Yeah. I saw the first Twilight because a friend had it playing. And I was like, this is terrible.
I've seen them all multiple times. Yeah. Great experience, but they are terrible. Terrible films, and I'm a terrible person for saying that. So,
any other like big points we want to make about the movie or about the cinematography or anything? I was like, again, for me, like, the cinematography was fine other than it was a lot of close-up shots, and
Did anyone notice that the phones, to me, seemed so big? It's like, I have a very small iPhone 5 that still works, and I know that that's a small phone, but they basically, like, there's, like, one scene where it's, like, again, one of the aggressive close-ups of Awkwafina using an iPhone, and it is, like, basically a tablet. And
I mean, is it possible that the that Awkwafina is so tiny?
I guess.
Yeah, I think it may be that.
It seemed insane to me.
Okay.
One thing that I appreciated was Dracula's lair being in this abandoned hospital. Like, perfect sense. It's like, no one's gonna bother. So, like, and just the fact that New Orleans was the setting. Like, I didn't pick up on that from the trailer that it was set in New Orleans, but I loved it. I mean, it's one of my favorite cities, and it was just made it a lot more fun. And then also, hey, people partying, going missing. Like, it's an easier cover, I think, to abduct people for Dracula's purposes.
Yeah.
I'll give you that.
Nick Cage, big New Orleans guy.
Is he?
Yeah. He has a weird tomb there. It's like a pyramid in one of the bigger cemeteries there that he's going to be buried in.
I was like, he's not dead yet.
No, he bought it like many years ago, and he still has it. I think at least like 3 or 4 of his other movies have been set there as well.
Okay.
Most importantly, Bad Lieutenant.
Yeah. Okay, so I was like many years ago, we were like playing a game, it was like a conversation starter game or like icebreaker game or something, and the question was like, what is like one of the most like enduring fictional characters in history? And we all like named people, and then someone went Sherlock Holmes, so we're like, oh dang, that's the right answer. But like you could easily say Dracula, right?
Yeah, for recent memory.
Dracula's definitely up there. And because I think even the Sherlock Holmes and Dracula novels were published around the same time.
And like we've never not had some version of Dracula in a movie, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So then I put it to you, like, what is the universal appeal of Dracula? Why have there been...
Immortality, I think, and like being rich, but also like feeling isolated and alone. Is like what 2 very universal things about him in terms of like what we want and how we feel.
And I think there's also the component of this like tall, dark, mysterious stranger, and like with like the sexual dynamic of like vampires, and like especially with like the Dracula story of like how he's lusting after Mina Harker. I mean, you don't have like that,
and like through letters.
Yeah.
Like, that's such a cool aspect about it. Like, I don't think he sees her for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess, like, I don't know, like, as someone who actually wants to be a vampire, but I'm still like, I don't understand why vampires have been so enduring. Like, I like what you said, though. Like, I guess the loneliness, I think, is a big part. Which is weird. I was like, why don't people want to be lonely? Like,
no, we feel that way.
Yeah.
So we identify with the most, obviously when we think about vampires or Dracula, it's like the eating and killing and stuff we presumably don't want to do, but that deep down, like despite whatever might be bad about us, we're also quite lonely at times, and that we have that in common.
And I also think that like vampires or Dracula get to like a sort of like dark side of like humanity, like some of our really dark impulses.
And they could do it,
yeah,
like without they can do what we want to do.
Well, yeah, like because Nick Cage, he even goes on like a monologue, kind of talk about that, like who cares about these people's rules and stuff? Like I'm a god. There, they just exist for like my purposes.
Yeah, he's like, it's time I like take this planet. That's like
I guess. Now that I'm thinking about it, like it's less the sort of anti-hero thing, right? Where you're just following Tony Soprano, who's just like a bad dude, and he's just a bad dude because he's a bad dude, and you're like, at least like with a vampire, like you have a legitimate excuse for being for killing people, like you needed to survive, right? So it lets you sort of get into your worst impulses, but then it sort of gives you the moral, like it takes away a little of your moral culpability for doing those things.
Because in order to do that and survive, you have to think less of regular humans, right? That's the natural progression. It's either you do that or you starve.
I mean, I promise you, when I'm a vampire, I'm going to think less of you.
And even as
drinking True Blood,
I'm going to try to kill animals, but I'm just like,
I don't think this.
I'd be like immortal and great.
Some things it does, but
only for familiars.
Yeah, and I know in Legends of the not Legends of the Fall, the other Brad Pitt movie, the Interview with the Vampire, which is basically the same movie. He eats animals for a long time.
Yeah,
that movie sucks. Just throwing that out there.
I had one other thought about the stuff like the appeal with like villains. This ties to the earlier point with like Dracula's appeal, like how he's rich. Because you think about it. I've even seen the meme on Instagram where people are like, "Why are vampires always so rich?" It's like, well,
compound interest.
Yeah, well, yes, like, and someone had a great response saying, like, if you've been alive since 1892 and you aren't rich, just step into the sun. and like, I
love everything about that line.
Like, and I mean, what's the point of being immortal or like this villain? And I actually had this conversation with the friends that watch with me, like. I like for my villains to at least, show like some luxury. Like I can at least understand your behavior if like you're living this lavish lifestyle for it. Like that tracks. Like if you're gonna be like a villain, why would you be hanging out in the sewers?
Yeah, that's not
like what's the point of the villainy if this is how you live?
You might as well just work for Amazon for No, that's a good point. So like so Garrett and I have talked extensively about how we want to be vampires and like what our plan is. And I'm like, it's like our first generation, we're going to be where we're at, but like every generation after that will be rich, right? Yeah. Like it was like, I'm an economist, compound interest, like, yes. Mm-hmm. So I was like, we just got to get through that first like quote unquote lifetime. Yeah. And then we're good.
That's, I think, like a good trope though. It's like in Blade, that's another thing where it's like they've amassed, they're basically the Catholic Church, I feel like, in that movie, where they're just, as he says, they have their claws into everything. And it's just, like, that's cool. That makes for a good story. Like, that first, not to digress here, but that first movie is so good because you have this sort of, like, old, antiquated, system that the villain of the movie is kind of going against, and I could talk about Blade for a while, so we'll just stop right now.
No,
I'm actually excited for the reboot they're going to do in the MCU, but I don't know if it'll be if they have to tone it down from being like R.
It's just not going to be Blade, which is like that, something like there were three. I think Blade 1 and 2 are like perfect movies. I like the third one. Oddly enough, Dracula is the villain in the third movie. Which is really stupid. And that movie's fun too, but it's like, I'm ready to say goodbye to that Blade, and I don't want this to try and be that Blade.
Yeah.
It won't be. Like, they couldn't... If they were like, you were going to make an R-rated movie, it still wouldn't work. Even if they wanted to do that. I don't think they could pull off a Blade. No one could.
Yeah, but that sort of brings up another good point about the vampire universe and the appeal of vampires. Like, for a while, like, you had Rich. I like your... Was it Rich, Lonely, and, like, a villain?
Yeah, you kind of like, what's the other thing I said? If only there was
rewind the tape.
But I mean, those are the two, like, appeals that they have to us.
Right.
An immortal. You live forever.
Oh, yeah, immortal, yeah. Yeah, the immortality is where...
Yeah.
That's the true appeal in my mind.
I feel like I read Tuck Everlasting as a real little kid, and I was like, why would anyone want to do this? This is just, like, the most depressing notion.
Yeah. You still feel that way? A lot of people do.
I would say that I'm older. I can see the appeal of living forever and being lonely sounds less bad than it did when I was 8.
And especially because if you stop aging, if you're at that, like...
I kind of want to age, though. I'm looking forward to looking like an old man.
Man,
funny.
I'm like, that's the problem with this whole vampirism thing. I was like, every year, like, I was like, I need to do it now. No, now. Like, but, so I will say, like, one of the things I think that's been great about the canon of Dracula is, like, so it started out rich, immortal, lonely, and sort of subtext of which was white, right? But we've had, Eddie Murphy made his movie, like, there have been other ones
Blackula in the 70s.
Blackula, yeah, and I was like, we have Blade, and I was like, and that started to shift as well, which I thought was, like, I don't know, like a different, obviously it's a different take on it. To your point about the loneliness, I'm like, then you had, I think it started, if it didn't start with Anne Rice, she popularized the, like, making other vampires, like, and having a community of vampires,
like the
right?
Nest. Yeah,
the Nest, like, which really, like, Dracula was on his own, and it seemed like he was the only vampire, and I'm, like, thinking... Was there a way to turn somebody vampire?
Well, didn't they have, were the Brides of Dracula a movie thing, or were they, so I've actually never read the Bram Stoker book.
They were a movie thing.
Okay. So.
Oh yeah, you have Bride of Frankenstein.
You know what I learned recently is Bram is short for Abraham.
Oh.
Isn't that
interesting?
Weird? Yeah.
So was his name Abraham Stoker? I knew he was Irish.
Yeah.
Did that sound too Irish? Like, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, like, I actually have read the original, and the original is good. It's just that, like, because it's the original, there's, like, vampires doing very obviously vampire things, and everyone's like, what's going on?
Oh, he's just like, a weird man.
And you're like, I don't know what's happening. And you're like, clearly it's vampire. Like, it's hard to put your mind back in a world where they had no idea what was happening.
There's no such thing as vampires. That's a concept.
Yeah, so that it's, like, funny because all the characters just, they seem very annoying and stupid for a long time. And you're like, I get that they're not, but it's really hard to go back. So yeah, I think that, like, Anne Rice the movie wasn't great. And I think
there's some good things about that movie. It's just, like, not a good movie.
No,
it's like a fun movie to watch. Tom Cruise is great, but it's stupid.
I think they're rebooting now. Like, I think
there's a show. Yeah.
Oh, there's a show.
Yeah. So going into its second season.
But, like, her books were so hugely popular, like, in terms of, like, vampire canon.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, she sort of focused on the, like, making new vampire aspect of it.
Yeah, and then, like, the tortured, like, of becoming one and not one. Like, if you're, like, not an evil person, like Brad Pitt, his character is in that, like, you just want to raise your family on your plantation in New Orleans, and a vampire bites you, and you don't want to be evil. And so you spend the whole movie, like, eating rats and being pissed off that you got turned into a vampire.
Yeah.
In a way that I don't think, like, nobody identifies with. Like, I wouldn't be psyched to be a vampire, but if I become one, I'm like, all right, this is what I am now, I guess. Like, I gotta lean into it some way.
Yeah.
And he's just, like, moping the whole movie away. Like,
it's kind of fascinating. I'm thinking, too, because it's been a while since I watched it, but yeah, he's running a planet. I'm like, presumably, having slaves in this time period. Like, oh, you're fine with that, but like, but then he's like, I'm a good person, but that's how people would think that.
Presumably, I think he has slaves.
So it's interesting. Like I think you're right. Like I think it's gone in those two tracks where you have the Dracula movies. They're still about the lone wolf vampire, and then you have Twilight, Interview with a Vampire.
Throw True Blood in there, because I think that gets a lot of hate when it should.
What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Very much a similar movie, but the show is hilarious. Funny. And Renfield's kind of in line with that show, as far as the vibe and
I was going to say, this movie borrowed a lot from What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah. Thankfully not the documentary aspect.
Oh, the mockumentary thing is getting very tired.
If this movie had been like that, I might have left.
Yeah.
Nick Cage or no Nick Cage, I can't abide another one of those movies.
And I appreciate at least Renfield wasn't like Guillermo. As far as oh, hey, I'll be turned one. Like, no, you're just this guy's gopher, having to go get bodies for him.
Yeah. I did enjoy the first season of What We Do in the Shadows, though. It's very funny. I loved, and the emotional vampires are
yes. What's his name? Colin.
Yeah, they're so funny. So they're these, it's they just drain the energy out of the room.
And it can go out in the daylight.
They go out in the daylight and they're just the lamest looking people, and they're just they just suck the energy out of
rooms, and people just oh god, this person.
So they're always trying to stir up drama to feed off of. It's again I'm the true victim here.
Funny.
Yeah, the psychology of it is very hilarious.
I wanted to see that for the crossover. I know they had Tilda Swinton.
Yeah, they did. We talked about that. Yeah,
that's a great vampire movie. The We Only Lovers Left Alive.
I've never seen that one.
Jim Jarmusch. If you don't like Jim Jarmusch, you might not like that movie.
Yeah,
because it is a Jim Jarmusch vampire movie, but it is quite good and quite rewarding, and things actually happen in it, unlike some of his movies.
Yeah. So then I think though the last kind of piece of it all that we've sort of hinted around, we've talked around it, but you didn't say in your initial why Dracula's great. It's I would argue the fourth prong, which is maybe a sum of all the other three prongs, is sexy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and or at least able to the glamoring. It does you can make people think you're sexy,
right? But there's just so much different types of canon on the glamoring, on the charisma, on the ability to command people, that you get sucked into their world, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's again what Anne Rice did, and then later Stephanie Meyer was lean into how vampires are sexy.
Yeah, there is. Repugnant franchise. Sorry.
That will be edited out because you curse, so don't worry. I don't know. Do you think vampires are sexy, Justin?
Well, I think that's a big part of their appeal. There is that sex component to the vampires. We were talking about earlier. I think it's just something about how you got the whole ravishing aspect of them. It kind of taps into sort of a dark primal thing that humans feel, and I think that's why this mythos resonates with us so much.
Humans?
What? Or people? What?
I was or women, right? Because vampires are sort of almost everything we've named. The vampires are dudes.
Well, yeah, and there's a lot of good reversing of that in True Blood, but yeah, it's typically to get power over women.
Right.
There's a few notable counterexamples Parker Posey in Blade 3.
Or Aaliyah was a vampire in Queen of the Damned. I mean, never read the book.
I've never seen that movie.
Yeah. Your Tilda Swinton, was she not a vampire?
Yes, and she turns the Tom Hiddleston character. She turns him into a vampire, and then they live together. And the movie's about them living together.
Okay.
Also, feel free to edit this out, but the subtext in that movie is that the food source is polluted because people are unhealthier. Is a great backdrop in that movie. And so it's their vampires are dying from eating bad people. It's kind of a great bit of the movie.
Yeah, no, I like that.
Processed foods, man.
Yeah. It's good comment on it. He doesn't use it to make any one point, but it's that's pretty good, Jarmusch. I'm gonna give you that one.
I'll give him that one. Yeah. So that's interesting too, because I'm I think it does, and I think I think what I like about Renfield is like they lean into that toxicity in terms of a boss-employer relationship where you have sort of two men acting that out. It doesn't have to be like a woman being seduced by a vampire. They show you how a man gets seduced by a vampire.
Tired. Yeah.
Right, it's tired. Like, it's been done a million times, and I'm sort of... it is one of those things that I am like, I don't know why this is sexy. Like, I want to be a vampire. Like, I don't want to sleep with a vampire. Like,
that's like another thing you like mentioned. Like, the movie does so well is that it's only after thinking and talking about it, are you like kind of like right now do I realize? This is like a employer-employee, male-to-male relationship. And, like, they don't beat you over the head with, like, look what we're doing here,
right.
It's, like, just another example of there being cool things in this movie that definitely probably are on purpose, but are not drilled into your head in a really frustrating or blatant fashion.
And even Dracula's interactions with people outside of Renfield, he definitely did have, like, a seductive charisma. Like, like, throughout... with anybody he was interacting with. Like, you could see how you'd be in his thrall.
Yeah, it was goofy enough, but also, like, you did buy it into it as well.
And Nick Cage, I'm pretty sure, had a lot of fun playing that role.
Yeah, well, and I thought, like, it was good to have the, like, mom be the head of the gang, too. And, like, you see when they meet, it's like, game meets game.
Yeah,
right? Like, they totally recognize each other, like... And it worked really, really well. And I think that, like, in this whole discussion, like, one of the things that I think this is so interesting is, like, there's been a million versions of Dracula. What did this have to add to the story? But it did. It found a different angle. And I think that's really cool. Especially because it's like I said, it's like women being seduced by Dracula. Like, it's getting old. Yeah. It's getting old.
It's played out. It's also not, this... Maybe this might not come out as well as I thought it might. It's not fun to watch that anymore. Like, you know what I mean? It's like not in any way something that is like entertaining or something you want in like a movie like this where it's supposed to be fun. So it's like, oh, that's gross. I don't like this. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, are we done with this?
Yeah, we're past this.
We're done with this.
Yeah, the movie did have a fresh take on the Dracula mythos.
Yeah. Which is an achievement in and of itself.
Yeah.
It is. So, to that end, social impact score recommendations. So, we'll kick off a social impact score from 1, this was the worst movie ever, to 10, life and movies as we know it. It's forever changed. Over to you, Justin.
I'll go with a 7 because I think it's a great new take on Dracula. And my first thought leaving the movie is that it may not do well at the box office, but I do think it has strong cult classic potential. Yeah, it's like the people who like this movie are going to love this movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
And real quick to just kind of piggyback on that, something I didn't really feel like came up organically when we were talking is, to that end, they didn't feel like they were trying to make that movie. They weren't doing like Snakes on a Plane, where it's like, hey, we got Nick Cage, it's gonna be Dracula. Everyone's gonna eat this up.
Right.
And it felt very organic in that is probably how that's going to happen. Not like, they were trying to do that the whole time. Like, obviously you're trying to make a movie that people will like. But other than that, you can't force a cult classic. Right, we've all seen when that happens. Yeah. I would make I think an argument that can be made that those are the worst kind of movies, in my opinion, to watch, to sit through. Is someone trying so desperately to be like, this is going to be really like discovered in like 30 years. It's going to be crazy, and I'm just like, no, it won't, and it shouldn't be. I'm going to agree with Justin. 7 did a lot of new stuff with the Dracula story, and it had a good message that wasn't shoehorned into the movie.
Yeah. I'm going to go a little lower. I'm going to go with a 5, just like middle of the road, because I don't know. Did anyone look up the box office? I don't.
Bricked. 8 million first weekend.
Okay.
Bomb.
Yeah. I felt like the reviews came out and they were so negative, and I was like...
The only thing I saw, because I Google Nick Cage once a week to see when the new stuff is coming out, and they were obviously focused on Renfield for a real long time, and the consensus seemed to be like, Nick Cage is having fun and is the only reason to see this movie, which I don't agree with. I think it had a lot more to offer.
No.
He's a highlight, but he's not the only reason to watch this movie.
No, this movie is quite good when he is not on screen as well.
Yeah, and like none of us said it, but Nicholas Hoult did a great job.
Yeah.
And he also does not appear to be wanting to hog the movie either when he is on screen.
No, it makes a very good straight man.
He is a very generous in everything I've seen him in. He seems to really give a lot of room to other people in movies.
Agreed. So I think it didn't do well. It got torched by reviews. I somewhat unfairly, I don't know. I mean, you're like, okay, so number one, like, people are always terrible with comedy, right? They never know how to evaluate it, and they frequently do a bad job, like, infamously with, like, Coming to America, like, that's one of the lowest Metacritic scores ever, right? Like, so I think that was unfair. I think it's better than that. I do think it will have a good streaming afterlife. I agree. I don't know if it's going to quite go into cult classic territory, but I think a lot of people are going to pick it up when it's available on streaming. Yeah. So I'm going with, just like a solid middle of the road. But I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like after talking about it, we're like, it was a fresh take on Dracula. Am I giving it enough credit for that? Like, and that's hard to do. Yeah. And
with vampires in general.
Yeah. Like, so maybe a 6.
Bumped up while giving
I know, after hearing you guys. I mean, these are such a crapshoot anyway. Like, we do the best we can.
Well, it's good to be fluid, I think. I don't ever, like, my opinions change on even my favorite things, and that's fine.
All right. Recommendations for the episode?
So, the recommendation I'll make will be the Invincible show on Amazon. It's one of Robert Kirkman's comics, and it's similar in vein as far as like the violence. It's on, but it's animated. It's about a superhero, teenager whose dad's the strongest superhero in the world, and him developing powers. But it's the same vein with like the comedy action. It's like Renfield. So
it's a show.
Yeah, it's a show. It's a comic book, and the comic book's complete. But the show, it's 1 season so far on Amazon Prime, and they've renewed it for 2 more seasons.
Cool. I'm going to go with an older pick, 2005 Nick Cage movie called The Weatherman. Very underrated. It is my number 1 Nick Cage movie for a lot of reasons that I won't get into here. And Nicholas Hoult plays his son in it as well.
So they did a movie together.
They had wonderful chemistry in that. And I think that Nicholas Hoult also was always a really good actor, even as a child actor. He was quite captivating, and it's been really great to kind of like watch him do his thing for his whole life and not have, I mean, I don't know the guy, but have like a rocky path to whatever he's doing now from then. And it's a wonderful, wonderful movie. Good spring, summer watch because it takes place in Chicago in the winter. So.
To that end, I was talking about this after the movie. Go back and watch About a Boy, or even read the book. I'm a huge fan of Nick Hornby. I just listened to a whole podcast about Nick Hornby it was about High Fidelity, but it just touched on like where his career's gone to, and he's continuously reinvented himself as a writer. Like, he didn't get stuck in that typecast of like male character. So watch About a Boy, read About a Boy. Like, I love Nick Hornby. I've read pretty much all of his books.
And lots of his books are available used at Lost City Books.
There you go. All right, so we hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, check out all our other episodes. Our website, moviesthatmatterpodcast.com. We have a store, we have merch, we have stuff. Talk to us on Facebook. Leave a non-misogynistic or racist comment on YouTube for us to check out. We're there all the places. And remember, movies matter.
And so do you.
We'll see you next time.